We're live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg, and it's that time on a Sunday night, 8 p.m., where we engage with you in matters that affect you, matters that affect your family, matters that affect your community. Tonight, water and gold. What's the link? I'll tell you shortly. All you need to know, it's topical. A very good evening to South Africa and those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. Our digital audience tonight, they're going to pop up there. Good to see them. Good to have them on the program. And just a reminder, digital audience, we have a very limited time tonight. I'd love to hear from all of you. So let's get those virtual hands up as soon as possible. If you have any comments or questions, I'll try my very best to get you on air. Water, can't live without it. Can't live without it. In this case, there's no two ways about it, right? Water supply issues in parts of this country. Water trucks deployed. I will show you visuals of a youngster who should have been watching cartoons or playing around, right? It's going to pop up on your screen shortly. There you go. Look at those little legs. But instead, helping bring water into the house. Why has it come to this? We'll bring you the reality on the ground tonight and hear what you are going through on a daily basis. Also, another story that caught our eyes this week, which is pretty hard to ignore. Gold Mafia. It's the title of news channel Al Jazeera's latest investigation. Allegations of gold smuggling and money laundering in southern Africa. It's definitely a talking point, and it talks to this show is what it's all about. If it's topical, we're going to talk about it and ask those questions, which leads us to the question of the week. And we're asking you, very simply, if you have watched the Al Jazeera's documentary on alleged illicit gold trading in Zimbabwe, what's your thoughts? Please send it to us at Its Topical SABC. Perspective coming up. All right, before we get to the Al Jazeera docu, let's take a look at this topical story. Water, or the lack thereof. Wednesday, March 22, marked World Water Day. And ironically, some areas were experiencing water cuts. For others, some people, they say, well, the provision of clean tap water has remained a pipe dream for decades. The Minister of Water and Sanitation will join us shortly after this Word on the Street feature, which this week comes from Boyson's in Johannesburg. Take a look.
It's very sad, especially in Human Rights Month, and it's just, we can't comprehend how can people live like this. And I'm not crying, but it is tears of sorrow, but it is very, very sad to, you can actually see all the people around us. It's unacceptable, and what are we going to do about it?
We've had a mayor that was here yesterday, exactly at the same spot. He said nothing. He spoke, but he said nothing. What he said didn't even make sense at all. And now what is frustrating is we could not even ask him questions to clarify the situation as to what is it that is going on here.
And what we receive is all these newsletters circulating on us. The problem is technically, and they are working on it. Working on it for 3 days. Where were they? Who is that working on technical problems if then they were there for so many years? Rand water. Now we are served by Joburg water. So who are those technical people that can't solve the problem in 3 days?
I've got to carry 6 of these every day. I've got to go look for water. Every day I've got to go look for water. If there isn't anybody with balls in Robertson that opens their balls, I've got to either drive to Lenasia to a friend of mine to fill up water, or I've got to drive to Greenside to my brother's place to fill up water. It's the cost impact is tremendous, and on my health, it's not doing me any good. My wife tried picking up one of these the other day, and she fractured one of the vertebrae in her spine. She's in hospital at the moment.
You know, as I say every week, the voice of the people is so important. The answers to those questions will help shape a strategy for better, as we keep on talking about on this program. Water and Sanitation Minister Sinto Mchunu is back in the country. Mchunu led a South African delegation to the United Nations Water Conference that took place in New York. He told the conference that, well, the country has made strides in bringing water and sanitation services to the citizens. Far more needs to be done. The minister joins us now in studio. Minister, good to have you on the program. You heard some of those views from people,
Yes.
really frustrated. On one hand, you're dealing with the water cuts, on electricity cuts. Now you're dealing with the water cuts. Your response to some of the concerns raised?
Well, firstly, just to greet all the viewers and yourself, my response is that we understand the frustration, clearly. I mean, we live among the people. We know, we meet them outside TV boxes. We go to the areas, we address them on a regular basis, every week now, as I would be doing next week. And so we understand where these things come from, and they're real, and they're true. But at the same time, I think when you look at the country, when you look at South Africa, where it comes from in terms of water provision to people, all the people, not some people or other people, everybody. And you look at where we are now, it is on those bases that I said we've made strides, because you do, by and large, find that there is water provision in most of the areas, but there are those areas that have not been provided. In other words, who have not yet received or have had access to water. That is real. And from there, I mean, that other week we were in a district where we were supervising and overseeing provision of water, but it's not yet water, it's pipes, it's the trenches, it's all of that.
Right.
So that's what we are saying when we say there's a lot that needs to be done. We are on it,
Right.
and we're dealing with
So
it.
let's give the public a sense of what is being done. Obviously,
Yes.
it needs to be, I guess, a holistic approach. We know that South Africa is a water scarce country. That's
Yes.
one issue.
Yes.
But the other issue is infrastructure. Leaky pipes, burst pipes.
Yes.
What is being done now
Yes.
that can sustain us in terms of water supply going forward?
We've started a process. I think it's an unusual process by the Ministry and Department of Water and Sanitation in the country, where we physically deal with efficiency assessment. We've started in Gauteng. We haven't gone out of Gauteng as yet. It was a session that involved Rand Water from the bulk side, ourselves from the resource management side, and then it was all the municipalities in Gauteng, including the 3 metros.
Yeah.
We were together, but not for the first time. It was on the 13th of March.
Right, I remember that.
We were checking each other to say how much water gets abstracted from the dam, that is from the Val Dam. Now, where does such water go? And from there, where? And from there, where? Up until it gets to houses. And we're checking in each instance how much water gets received once abstracted by, for instance, Vereniging and the other primary water plant, Zekerbosch. And then from Zekerbosch, both of them, when you go to the 4 secondary boosters, that is pump stations, that pump to the metros now, how much leaves there, how much gets received that side. And we now are certain, we're no longer guessing what's happening. We are very certain that in the case of Gauteng, we have a situation where overall, we are short of 300 megaliters per day. All right?
Per day. 300 megaliters per day.
300 megaliters per day.
Right.
that is not to say there's no water in the Vaal.
Right.
There is water, and there is more than enough water in the Vaal. But in the system that supplies homes and households and businesses and agriculture, that's where the shortage is. And how does that happen? It's a number of things. It's the capacity of the infrastructure in terms of carrying the volume that is in accordance with the demand. You need to check that on a regular basis. And my take is that we haven't been supervising and checking. We've just been, from a distance. And time has gone. So you have a situation where the demand is far more than what Rand Water is able to supply to the metros. Leave leaks. Leave every other thing.
Just before you go on to the next point, that particular issue, I just want to tackle that issue in terms of supervising it.
Yes.
So we know that it's been relatively neglected in terms of keeping a closer eye. What's going to change now?
What is going to change is that in June, by end of June, not next year, this year, Rand Water will have finished what they are doing in Zekerbosch. That is adding 150 megaliters per day, and that is certain. And that I want to inform you and inform the public in Gauteng and the rest of South Africa that we will be halving the problem that we are talking about by at least 150. And then somewhere at the end of the year, beginning of next year, see December, January, the other 150 will come, 150 megaliters. And then that will now be at par in terms of the demand. But that doesn't end the story. We know that by 2030 we must have added water. We must have added another volume, some more than 400 cubic meters in the system. We are doing so via Lesotho Highlands Water Project, because that is due for commissioning, the first phase, around about the end of 2026, 2027. That's what beginning of 2027. That's what we're working on, and this is work that has started. And so we're certain about this. And we are doing this so that when we talk to people, we talk to them with certainty so that they know what is happening and what we are doing. So
definitive benchmarks now set June, and then we'll see at the end of the year in terms of making up that.
Definitely, but I want to add that in the meantime, there is a lot that needs to be done. Pipes must be repaired. The turnaround for burst pipes must be shortened. And leaks must be reduced substantially. But there's another problem, a running problem of people arriving in building homes in Gauteng. Like we are talking now, somebody's building a home.
Are you talking about informal settlements? Mushrooming of informal settlements
and so on. This is our problem insofar as water provision and planning is concerned. And we wish that human settlement as a whole in the country arrest this problem. Because if you do it this way, the way you do it, you'll always have a deficit of one kind or the other in government services.
What about the issue of vandalism as it relates to burst pipes, etc., infrastructure damage? How big of a threat is it?
It is there, and it's of major worry. 2 weeks ago, part of the eastern side of infrastructure belonging to Rand Water was vandalized, and it caused a lot of disruption. Up to Tshwane, some parts in Eguruleni, because of vandalism. This is despite that we have security, we have Rand Water security and Eguruleni and so on, but vandalism is a problem in as much as illegal connections are a problem. And we're saying to South Africans, you are respected citizens, you are loved, you are well known, you are budgeted for, you are known in the country. There's no need to steal water. And I said, if you find yourself in a community that lives on stealing water, that is on illegally connecting, please report. Report to us. We're not going to call police. We're going to go to your area, find out why is this community find themselves in a position where they illegally connect? Is it because there is no other way or what? And then we address the problem so that we bring dignity to them. I don't think there is a mother or a father, a sister or a daughter, or who wants to depend on illegal connection and stolen water. I don't think that is the way to go.
Look, just finally, as we wrap up, we're talking about getting to that end goal by 2030 in terms of water security. We've just got 7 years left for that. Plans in place, interventions in place to get to that goal. What about the issue of desalination? I mean, South Africa is blessed with, what, a 3,000-kilometer coastline. What about using that in terms of, getting solutions?
We are venturing into that, but we're talking to coastal towns to say to them, look at this, it is an alternative. They are doing it. They are getting into it. For instance, Port Alfred, Richards Bay, all those municipalities, they have certain volumes of water, or they have made attempts. But there's a challenge in terms of expenses to meet desalinated water because the price is quite a little bit high for consumers. You can do this, and then you pass the price to the consumers, and it becomes
we can't take any more. We can't take any more.
Becomes
That's
a little
complaint.
bit.
Look, no doubt it's obviously our conversation needs to be limited now, but no doubt we'll try to bring you on. We'll keep to that benchmarks. We'll bring you back. We'll see how much has been done in terms of June. Then at the end of the year, it's all about holding the powerful accountable, isn't it?
We really want people to put us on terms and also put them on terms.
Correct.
On their side of not wasting water, not abusing water, but on our side, we're working very hard. Our sleeves are up and we're on it.
All right, Minister, thank you very much indeed for your time. Appreciate it. All right, Minister of Water and Sanitation, Senzo Mkunude. We also need to talk about the sanitation issues here, maybe another time. The issue of pit latrines, as you know, been very, very topical of late. We'll discuss that in future programs as well. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, gold mafia, what's it all about? Stay tuned to find out. All right, let's talk gold, and let's give you a sense of what we know regarding the alleged illicit trade of gold in Zimbabwe following that explosive documentary which aired on Al Jazeera. And for that, let's turn to the magic wall and give you a sense of what we're talking about. I want to talk to you about this. The Center for Natural Resource Governance conducted a study to investigate and conceptualize, what would say, the illicit economy of the artisanal gold mining sector in Zimbabwe. And according to its report, and that was last year, titled Zimbabwe's Disappearing Gold, it states that over the past years, Zimbabwe has experienced an unprecedented increase in illicit financial flows. This report goes on to state that the smuggling of gold means reduced revenue for health, education, transport, energy, the list goes on, agriculture and infrastructural development in Zimbabwe. So that's the consequences according to this report. But what about solutions, right? Where can we find solutions to this? Let's take a look at some of the Center for Natural Resource Governance recommendations up on your screen. Among them, government must liberalize gold buying and break Fidelity printers and refiners' monopoly. It goes on to say gold smuggling offenses should be given high priority by the courts, and culprits also should get deterrent sentences. The final one that they mention was government should pass a law that recognizes and defines artisanal miners. So I want to go back to the Al Jazeera documentary. And their investigation unit showed us how alleged smugglers use gold to, allegedly launder billions of dollars of so-called dirty money. Take a look at this, right? This is basically how they define it. Let's give you a sense of what we're talking about here. The first one they say is gold mafia have licenses to buy gold from Zimbabwean miners for Fidelity. It goes on to say that Gold Mafia also have gold export licenses with the Reserve Bank minus subsidiaries. Also saying that the Gold Mafia exports Zimbabwean gold to Dubai. The fourth one was Gold Mafia instructs undercover reporters to set up gold trading companies in Dubai. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the countries in a short while. Dirty money, as they say, is brought back to Zimbabwe by their couriers. And the dirty money is disguised as revenue from the legal sales of gold. And finally, in Dubai, money from the gold sales is transferred to bank accounts as legitimate. And as I say, that's the source, the Al Jazeera documentary. We have one of the producers of that documentary on the program going to explain a little bit more. Take a look at this. These are some of the countries, so-called hotspots according to the documentary. United Kingdom, Dubai, Zimbabwe, South Africa. Part one only of that documentary. What more can you expect? Context, important. Why this matters. What is the appropriate response? Let's get perspective now. And as I said, we are joined by the producer of the investigative documentary here with us tonight, as well as Kudzai Mutisi, is a political analyst, as well as our digital audience. Good to have you all on the program. And as I said, we have limited time, so if you want to get your questions on air, please raise your virtual hand and we'll try our very best to get you on air. Kudzai, first of all to you. Initial reaction. Words used to describe it, explosive documentary. But how shocked are you, or how surprised are you by some of the contents in that documentary?
Thank you for having me. I'm not shocked by whatever they said. In terms of there is gold smuggling. It has always been a problem for the government, a problem for the country, even a problem for the region. Smuggling is not new and is not unique to Zimbabwe. It's something that has been happening it's happening all over the world, and it is motivated by different factors. In case of Zimbabwe, the gold sector has a long value chain. It starts with the mining of the gold, which is done by the artisanal miners. I see in your report you said they have to be legalized. They're actually legalized.
Right.
Zimbabwe doesn't have what we call zamazamas here. All the small-scale miners are actually legalized. They're allowed to mine the gold, and most of them are actually locals.
Right.
Now, after the gold has been mined, it has to be processed. There's also a value chain for that. There are people who are doing the processing. From the processing, it has to be sold. So there is domestic trade. There hasn't been any scandal about the domestic trade because people who are licensed to buy, they go to these miners, they buy the gold, and there are two types of buyers. There are what are called gold dealers.
Right.
They buy the gold. They are also allowed to export the gold. Then there are gold buying agents. They buy the gold and they only sell to Fidelity, which is a company owned by the Reserve Bank.
Right.
Fidelity can export the gold, and the gold dealers can also export the gold. They are licensed too. It's allowed. It's open for everyone. In fact, when they say it's open for business, everyone can join that, can apply and then get licensed. Now, where the issue is on the exporting of the gold. And smuggling is not limited to licensed people. Anyone can smuggle, by the way, because it's a way of trying to evade paying taxes, or it's a way of trying to evade controls, because the government tends to control the movement of gold in the country. But what I don't agree with the Al Jazeera documentary is that they scandalize the whole country. They scandalize every participant in the industry. They also scandalize the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, as if it's enabling it and it's facilitating it. If you watch the documentary, the people who are doing, or who are claiming to be doing it, we didn't see any evidence that they're actually doing it. We saw them claiming that they're doing it. These people, they actually said the Reserve Bank don't know where they're getting the money. Because they license them, but the money they're bringing, no one can know that this money came from selling tomatoes or selling onions. They don't know, and that's what money laundering is about. It's a crime if it is done, and those who do it, they try to evade the controls. That's what happens here. So there is no shock that there's gold smuggling. It has been happening all over. It always happens. And if someone is caught, they have to be arrested and for it.
Let's take it to Alexander James, who is a producer from Al Jazeera's investigative unit. Alexander, good to have you on the program. Kudzai says that Al Jazeera is, use the word again?
They're scandalizing the whole industry.
The issue. Scandalizing the issue.
Government.
What's your response?
Thank you for having me on the show. And I think Kudzai is right. It is a scandalous issue, which we are shining the light on here. I disagree with some of the things that he has said in terms of the artisanal mining sector being entirely licensed in that way. One of the key players in the gold mafia, Ewan McMillan, who has a long history of gold smuggling himself, but is licensed by Fidelity to be a gold buyer for them. He is very open about the fact that he requires no paperwork whatsoever from the miners who he's buying the gold from. And Kudzai's right to say that this is scandalous. What our documentary has uncovered, it is scandalous, and it shows essentially how a gold mafia sits at the very heart of Zimbabwe's gold trade, and this is just coming through the evidence that we've uncovered and presented in this first film of 4. If you want to see more evidence of what's to come, stick with the series, because there's plenty.
Is that what you meant by scandalizing?
When I say scandalizing here, I mean there are a lot of players in the gold industry, and obviously if there are a few, we saw a few who were claiming that they are doing smuggling and illegal things. But there are a lot of players in there who are still doing things legally. They are not the only people who have been licensed by the government. There are a lot. And in terms of artisanal miners, it's legal in Zimbabwe to be an artisanal miner. I think it actually costs $200. So anyone can pay to be an artisanal miner and mine the gold. But you don't keep the gold in your house. You have to sell to someone. And the people you sell to are buyers. They are also licensed to buy. You have to be licensed to buy. And once you buy, you have two choices. If you're allowed to export, if you have an exporting license, you can also export the gold on your own. But if you don't have, you take it to Fidelity, which is the government, the RBZ-owned company. You sell to them. So where there is usually a criminality or a breaking of the laws is when people are trying to avoid selling to Fidelity because Fidelity's price is lower than what you can get elsewhere. That's what I actually like the presentation that you made, that one of the solutions is simply to liberalize it, because the government controls the price, and because of that, there are people who try to evade that lower price that the government is offering. That's where it happens.
Alexander, I'm going to come back and get your comment in a short while, but I see Rutendo hand is up. Rutendo, jump in, weigh in, your comment or question? If you can unmute Rutendo. Let's try that. There you go.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to critique the gentleman from Al Jazeera, because he is contradicting his own presentation that they gave us when they showed us the video. They showed us that he showed us a diagram where he says that the government of Zimbabwe doesn't have money to buy the gold. So it sends out buyers who go and buy the gold from the gold miners. So automatically gold is paid for at that point. He then said that the gold is taken to Fidelity, where it is refined. They pay a price at Fidelity for the refinery, and nothing leaves Fidelity without money being paid to the revenue first services in Zimbabwe that are called ZIMRA. So once that is paid, the owner of the gold has basically paid the tax and is basically paid the miners for the gold, and he takes it out of the country. Now, he then says that they bring it back. They bring it back to who? And what are they bringing back when they have actually bought, paid the tax, paid the miners, what is being brought back. So that was a contradiction from Fidelity because they don't sound to know what they're talking about. Then lastly, what I also wanted to talk about is the fact that Zimbabwe has got an organization called Zimbabwe Miners Federation. It's got 1.2 million artisanal miners and small-scale miners that are registered there. These are the bulk of our gold miners. These are the beneficiary of this. These are people with no O-levels, people no education. They're becoming millionaires. They are making US dollars. They are actually the ones building and in charge of this building boom that you're seeing in Zimbabwe because they get paid for what they do. So this smuggling that he was talking about, can you explain to us who is smuggling when the miners are being paid? Who are these illegal miners he's talking about if the Zimbabwe Miners Federation has got 1.2 million people? And what is this money laundering that he's talking about if the buyer was an agent, the buyer and seller who is an agent has got no vicarious liability. He's not an employee of the government of Zimbabwe, not an employee of Zimbabwe. How is it that the government of Zimbabwe is being held responsible for the crooked activities that he undertakes on his agency outside? Lastly, Fidelity Printers is the one that has the license to export Zimbabwean gold through MMCZ. They do not necessarily give licenses for export, but you actually get to use the Fidelity Printers' license, or they'll license you to use their license rather than giving people licenses. So it's revocable. It's given for every time that you need to take the product out of the country. So I just wanted to straighten that out and try and get some of the facts that were not right. And some of the contradictions that we heard from the documentary. Alexander
Rutendo is raising issues that he sees as contradiction. Your response?
Well, look, let's just break it down. Firstly, so in the film we present, we have our undercover reporters meet Ewan McMillan, Kamlesh Patni. They are gold buyers. They go out and source gold from the artisanal miners. They deliver it to Fidelity. Fidelity doesn't have the money to pay them for the gold. So they are given export licenses in return. So they export that gold. They sell it in Dubai. Part of the condition of that export is that they bring the proceeds back in US dollars cash. So they're banking it. It's going to the private sector, but it's they're bringing hard currency back into the economy. For the money launderers, this obviously presents an opportunity, as Ewan McMillan himself says, to launder massive amounts of money, because you need to bring some cash into the country, and if you can declare it at the airport as the proceeds of a gold sale and run it through the gold buying process, that suddenly gives a route for dirty money to come in the country, and it's be given a purpose, and when it's and then banked at the other end in Dubai when the gold is sold. So that's the money laundering, and that's the buying. And I don't think there's anything contradictory in what I've said or explained there. Going back to the Zimbabwe Miners Federation as well, we come across Henrietta Rushwaya, the president of that federation, who again sort of presents this opportunity for the money launderers to move their money through the gold trade by bringing in a cash investment. And I think, if we're talking about smuggling, if we're talking about money laundering, all of this relies on a system that is it captured or entirely beholden to those interests. And I think this is something which over the course of the series we'll be able to expand on more and hopefully put some of these questions to bed.
I just want to bring back, I saw Fraser had his hand up, but Rutendo, let's bring you back in, because I saw you shaking your head there. Which issues don't you agree with?
Right. It actually sounds like nonsense, because it's nonsense in the aspect that Fidelity Printers doesn't have money to buy the gold in the first place. So this is why they license gold buyers to go and buy gold from the gold miners or the artisanal miners. They then buy this gold from the artisanal miners. Fidelity Printers doesn't need to buy the gold from these gold buyers because they now own the gold. But those gold buyers need this gold to be certified to leave the country, and they need it to be smelted so that it can leave the country. So they go to fidelity printers and refineries to refine the gold. So they are supposed to pay for that service of getting the gold refined, getting the gold certified, and then getting the licensing to get the gold out of the country and to pay Zimbabwe revenue services for them to leave with the gold. Once that is done, they've left the royalties in Zimbabwe, they've left the taxes in Zimbabwe, and they take their gold because it belongs to them. So what are they bringing back? Why is this issue that they're bringing something back to Zimbabwe? Because they've already left everything. They've paid for in US dollars for the gold, they've paid for US dollars for the refining, they've paid for US dollars for their license to leave with the product as their own, where it is that they get a less than 4% return, which they lied. Al Jazeera said they get 16% return. That's nonsense. And this is the problem we have with the documentary. It's full of falsehoods, it's full of lies. Even Henrietta Rishwaya, it's an allegation that she was on the phone. We don't know that she was on the phone. They edited the phone recordings. We did not have raw data of these phone recordings. These phone recordings, these recordings that they gave in the program are not even admissible in court because they are exactly a manipulation, which is why the courts would never accept something like that. So how do we trust them? And the witness that they were using, what's his name? Whatever his name is, he was drinking alcohol. He is a convicted felon, as he's saying. How do we believe the testament of a convicted felon without a right of reply to the people that they're alleging to have done certain things? This is propaganda, stinks like the propaganda that Al Jazeera did to cause the Arab Spring, killing millions of people. It actually is disgusting to watch that happening on television in an international media house.
I'm told I need to go to a break, but I just need to bring in Alexander to respond to that and help us understand. You know, Rutendo's outlining certain processes that he has an issue with. Talk to us about, in your response to Rutendo, the process that you had to go to in terms of verifying everything that is in that documentary.
Yeah, I mean, we're professional journalists, and we do everything we can to verify the information that we broadcast. We're stringently regulated by the British regulator, Ofcom. We offer all of the people that we make allegations about in our, or present evidence of wrongdoing of, rather I should say, in our documentary. We offer them the right of reply to the evidence that we present. These aren't just undercover fishing trips as well. We have to provide prima facie evidence of wrongdoing before we begin our undercover work. And our evidence is backed up by documents as well. Documents from Kamlesh Patni's business, documents from the RBZ itself. So we build a case based on the evidence that we uncover through our investigation. We're evidence-led, and the idea that this is a campaigning piece that comes from an idea we picked out of thin air, or it's propaganda. I mean, I simply don't think that's a credible view at all.
All right, still more to discuss. Fraser, I see your hand up. I just need to take a quick break. When you come back, I'm going to get Kudzai's take on this as well. With regards to the ramifications now that this documentary has aired, remember it's one of 4 parts. Still more to come, as Alexander has been teasing out. What are the consequences of this? More international pressure on Zimbabwe, perhaps? We'll discuss in a short while. Stay with us. All right, part 1 of Al Jazeera's documentaries called Gold Mafia has set tongues wagging, and as it depicts how Africa's mineral resources don't seem to benefit many of developing countries, Zimbabwe included. Here's what Zimbabwean nationals living in Roodepoort on the west of Johannesburg had to say about the revelations of alleged looting and money laundering in their country.
eZimbabwe akukho umsebenzi sibuya lana eGoli nje sihamba silandela abafowethu lathi sikwazi ukudinga imali ukwenzela ukuthi sikwazi ukondla abazali bethu. So ngokuswelakala kwezimali futhi ebalungwini lokuswelakala kwemfundo emakhanda nemisebenzi sisuka singene phansi emhlabathini sikwazi ukudinga umhlabathi siyenza amatshe sikwazi ukuthola imali ukuthi sisize abazali bethu.
Sizingane sisukile sesisemazweni lapha sesiphelile ngokufa ngenxa yokuthi ilizwe lakithi aliphathekanga kahle. Lithatha umhlaba igolide lethu lilisa kwamanye amazwe. Alila mali, alilani. So siyabe sicela ukuthi kuke kuzamakale utshintsho elizweni lethu.
Thina ekuvillage yethu kubhakile yabona. Akuzange kwenziwe lutho, akuzange kwenziwe next but igolide kade liphumala beliningi kakhulu. So ingiphethe kabuhlungu lento le ngize ngathi of South Africa because angibhadali lento engiyenza la.
All minerals they transport to other countries and sold there. But after selling those minerals, nothing is helped our country. I don't know what shall we do to solve that problem.
Yabona mfowethu lento ibuhlungu kakhulu ngoba igolide lona likhona eZimbabwe likhona igolide eZimbabwe indlela abalithatha ngakhona bathatha ngendlela errong mabelithatha igolide leli kwamanye amazwe lihambe ladayiswa kumele sithole sometimes ukuthi kwakhiwe ilizwe lethu leZimbabwe imigwaqo ifile yonke into vele imoshakele eZimbabwe but sinama minerals yahle si rich thina eZimbabwe yabona ngama minerals but ama-minerals ethu la esi-rich ngawo abasebenzeli uyabona yinto esi-affecta kakhulu leyo i-painful kithi singabantu beZimbabwe.
All right, thank you very much indeed for your views. Let's further our discussion. Let's bring back Kudzai Mutisi, political analyst. We still have our guests on our video wall as well. We'll get to them in a short while. But let's just talk a bit about when you see the amount of cash that is used in this documentary, the amount of cash that is talked about, it's jarring for the layman, right? Give us context with regards to cash being used in the gold trade.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think Alexander and his colleagues at Al Jazeera, they miss the context of the Zimbabwe gold trade. The buyers go to the artisanal miners and they can only buy there in cash. They cannot buy in electronic dollars or in another currency. They cannot use Zimbabwe dollars. They use US dollar cash. Before, Fidelity had the monopoly to buy the gold because they had the cash. But after they couldn't get access to the cash because of the US sanctions. If you check in 2019, South African banks, which used to supply the cash to the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, the US dollar cash, they say they cannot do that anymore because they were threatened by the Americans that they will sanction them. So when Zimbabwe now could not get the cash to buy the gold, that's why they are licensing other people to do the buying and also to use cash. And that's why the export of this gold has to be done and paid in cash because you need the cash to go and buy back the gold. So it's not scandalous that cash is used. It's actually the norm that you have to use cash. But Alexander and his people, when they looked at it, they felt like there's so much cash flying around. It has to be there, it's used. And Zimbabwe actually uses US dollars.
Alexander, do you feel that the documentary has contextualized the use of cash in this gold trade?
Yes, yeah, I think we do. And going back to the cash as well, I think one of the really scandalous things that our documentary showed is the evidence that some of these gold buyers actually don't bring cash back with them at all, and that they forge paperwork on entry to make it seem like they're bringing cash back with them from the proceeds of gold sales, but in fact aren't. And I suppose that in itself points to a weakness in this cash-based system, is that it really poses risks for due diligence checks. If you're transacting through a banking system, you've got all sorts of checks and balances there, but in a cash-based system, you don't. And that is, again, that's why it was presented by the likes of Macmillan and Co. as an opportunity to launder money, and Ambassador Angel too. That, essentially you've got a cash-based economy here with the gold trade, and it lays itself open to corruption and money laundering, and that's what our evidence shows.
Let's take it to our digital audience now. Let's go to Fraser, Zita, and Trisha in that order. Fraser, to you first, if you can unmute.
All right. Good evening to all the viewers. I'd just like to say to Rutendo and Kudzai, there is no need for you guys to protect the system. Zimbabweans are tired. No one would, in their rightful state of mind, use the president's family as reference unless the president's family is actually involved. Zimbabweans have been struggling. You can visit Harare, for instance. You know that very well, Kudzai and Rutendo. On each and every street corner, there are Zimbabweans selling. And you're in your rightful state of mind, you want to protect the government. Look, we know why the government would use these agents. It's only for their own gain, for the handful individuals, and they should be held accountable. And to think about it, right, as much as we are fed up, you should understand that it's been decades and decades of Zimbabweans being suppressed and oppressed by the government, depriving us. Where else you should be protecting us? We barely have enough funds to run our hospitals, enough funds to run our education system. Our nurses are forever striking. Our teachers are forever striking. And you are here trying to protect the system that is actually taking our country on its knees.
Fraser, thank you very much for your comments. Zita, Trisha, and Sfiso in that order. Zita, to you first. If you can unmute, Zita, we're battling to hear you. We'll come back to you in a short while. Trisha, if you can unmute, let's try to get you on air. Let's get your thoughts, Trisha.
Okay, thank you for start. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm audible, but from my side, actually looking at the, okay, thank you. So from my side, hearing from both sides, actually, it's actually a perspective where you need to look at both sides. For starts, it can be a conspiracy because one time you need to think, okay, when you're exposing somebody, let's say that's smuggling gold, you need to know that there's going to be certain features that are going to be aligned alongside those lines. There needs to be, there needs to be crucial evidence that's going to be actually taking place. And referring back to the other person that was also speaking, also, there's also some points of value that are actually taking place. You can't make something to be illicit. At the same time, you're saying that there's corruption within it. So this is actually some kind of a two-way street. One point, it might be correct that there's a conspiracy that's going on, but we need to also look at it from another perspective. That if some individuals were trying to actually be revealed that they were actually in these smuggling boats, they wouldn't be catch live on camera. It's not easy for start. It's something that needs to go through certain procedures. And with that, it can also be that there is some kind of shady dealings that are actually taking place. But at the same time, it's not easy to unveil such a crucial matter.
Right.
With that at hand, we need to look at both sides of actually what is happening and investigate further so that we can come up with a concrete dealing of actually how does it turn out.
Okay.
That's my point of view.
Trisha, thank you very much indeed. Zita, let's try you one more time there. If you can unmute, let's get your take, and then Sfiso and Kosanati. There you go, Zita.
Thank you very much, Blair. Thank you very much. I think my line is very bad. I've been trying all along. I don't understand the political analyst Kuzwaya here when he's trying to play a defensive football based on the situation which is happening in Zimbabwe. Looking at Zimbabwe as it is, we don't see Zimbabwe growing. But as he said that the drug dealers are using a very precise and clear route for buying the gold and exporting them as such a map. But if that it has to happen, it means that the currency of Zimbabwe has to go up. But now, when the system is like that, it means it's a black market. And when there's a black market, it simply tells us that there is no profit, imagine, getting straight into the Zimbabwean pocket. So, and the Zimbabwean citizen, which they are suffering here, they should not be in that predicament if the system of Zimbabwe it is well administrated. Understand?
So
I don't know whether they can hear me.
Yeah,
my line is very
We got you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's take Sfiso, then Nkosanathi. We have around 4 minutes to go. Sfiso, to you first, if you can unmute. There we go.
Yes. Thank you for having me. What I want to know is that how can we know or put it in, I don't know what you can say, but how do we know that this documentary by Al Jazeera is not a conspiracy theory to get the international community to put more pressure on the economy of Zimbabwe? And from where I'm sitting right now, after I've seen the documentary and the defense of the guy you have there, how? I don't know.
Okay, let's get an answer, Alexander. Then we'll go to Nkosanathi, just to Sifiso's concern about conspiracy issues.
Well, look. I mean, to pick up on what some of the other guests were saying, that it's important to remember that this isn't a victimless crime. Like, there's all of this corruption, all of this money laundering, all of the gold smuggling. There is a real knock-on effect of that, and that's the fact that this is not money that's being invested in Zimbabwe. In terms of knowing whether or not our journalism is conspiracy theory, look, like as I said before, we have followed a trail of evidence. We're evidence-based journalism, and this is. And this is the result of that. And in many of these cases, you're hearing it from the people involved in that criminality themselves. It's their own words, and it's whether or not you choose to trust listening to what they are saying.
All right. Let's go to Nkosanathi, and I see Rutendo's hand is up. We've got about 2 minutes left. Nkosanathi, to you first.
Okay, good day, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. According to me, corruption is war, and the Zimbabwean should fight corruption at all costs. And the documentary appears to be exposing wrongdoings by the government officials. If they are doing wrong, they should account.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to, I'm losing it on my screen. Okay, Rutendo, to you first, very quickly.
Unmute.
If you can unmute Rutendo. Very quickly.
Right. I just wanted to say we become so used to seeing men who look like Alexander, who sound like Alexander, telling us about evidence-based journalism when they cause so much hurt and so much suffering like they did in Iraq. They had evidence-based that there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They were lying. They told us that there were no sanctions in Zimbabwe until the United Nations came and said that there were sanctions in Zimbabwe. People like Alexander have proved that they lie. The British president was proved to have been lying about Iraq so that they could attack Iraq. The sanctions in Zimbabwe are a reason and a motive for the British government and the Americans to keep lying about Zimbabwe, to add more sanctions and to add money laundering so that we can have a blacklisting or grey listing of our financial system for them to achieve their ends. We cannot believe journalists like this anymore. We need to challenge them, and Al Jazeera has no integrity whatsoever.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Do we have time for one more comment? Fihlo, let's take you very quickly. Fihlo, if you can unmute.
My point of view is that, are we really going to turn a blind eye to what is happening? As much as you're saying that Alexander and Al Jazeera are a bit more of scandalous, are we really going to turn a blind eye to what is really happening in Zimbabwe? Because a lot of them are saying that they're suffering from this whole thing, but you are turning a blind eye to that. What does that mean?
All right, thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, Alexander. We appreciate your comments as well, all our digital audience, our guests, as well, our political analysts, because I appreciate you, Better Mind, on the program, giving us a full perspective in terms of what we're dealing with. No doubt, Alexander, part 2, 3, 4 coming up. We will be keeping our eyes peeled and further discussions, no doubt, to be had. Thank you very much indeed, all of you. Before we go, here's my take. I'm reminded of a quote from author Terry Goodkind, who wrote, "To a man dying of thirst, water be more precious than gold. To a drowning man, water be of little worth and great trouble." Pertinent perspective. Why? Because we are talking about two precious resources in Africa, water and gold. Goodkind goes on to say that everything is valuable under the right conditions. Both water and gold have no doubt the potential of enriching our lives, but only if we have legitimate access to it. The Al Jazeera's latest investigation, Gold Mafia, gives rise to a lot of questions. So does South Africa's water woes. For me, the golden thread that lies or ties these two stories together lies in the pursuit of better for humanity. Solutions can only be found when there's this common concern and collective as well as political will to find the answers. And more likely than not, that's when you'll see the best of humanity. That's my take. If you missed anything, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.